Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing with you a layout that displays 13 photos. To do this I've had to create a folder on my page. Ray and I do house sitting and these photos are from one of those house sits. This photo shows the fold out section of the page. I used Photoshop to resize 12 photos so that they were 4 inches by 3 inches, and I left one as a 6 by 4, which will be on the front of the fold out section. I went through my stash and found some craft cardstock that I'm going to use for my folder, and I found some Prima Sunset Sunrise collection called White Hot, and also some 7 Dot Studio Domestic Goddess Women's Talk that I'm going to use for the actual pattern paper. To create the folder, I'm cutting 2 pieces of the craft cardstock. One is going to be 1/2 inch wider than the other so that I can join the two together, but my folder is going to be 8 3/4 inches by 10 inches. So I'm cutting one piece 8 3/4 by 10 and one 9 1/4 by 10. I'm going to score the 9 1/4 inch edge at 1/2 inch, and I'm going to attach double-sided tape to that and attach it to the back of the smaller piece. Now that I've got my booklet, I've just positioned my photos on there to see that they fit nicely. I have gone ahead and cut some photo mats. The photos are 4 inches by 3 inches and the photo mats are 4 1/8 by 3 1/8. So I'm only having a very fine black mat around each photo. Now that they're all matted, I go ahead and position them how I want them to be and use double-sided tape to attach them to the booklet. I'm going to use the Toil and Trouble by Making Memories paper, that's the green one, for my background, and I'm going to cut the strip off of that, and I'm going to use the 7 Dot Studio Women's Talk Domestic Goddess paper to cover the booklet. I'm going to take the pattern paper right to the edge of the booklet, and I'm going to use Victorian Velvet Distress ink to distress the edges of the paper. I also add a bit of the black soot distress ink to darken up the colour a bit. Once I'm happy with the paper, I use some Aleene's original tacky glue to attach the pattern paper to the folder. I'm going to attach my booklet to the background paper now. I'm going to use the same glue to do that, and I'm going to leave about 2 inches on the right hand side of the booklet where I don't actually glue it down, because I may want to tuck something in there when I start to embellish the page. So it's time to start work on the front of the folio now. So I have matted the front photo. I've given it the same border as the photos inside, so the photo's 6 by 4, so I've cut 6 1/8 by 4 1/8 for the black mat. Now I'm going to cut a piece of this cardstock, which is 7 Dots Domestic Goddess. I cut this piece of cardstock to 7 3/4 by 8 inches. I take a Papercraft Grunge 6 by 6 stencil and some Montmartre modelling paste, and I apply the modelling paste through the stencil using my palette knife. When that dries, it dries white, so it should stand out. Although having a white background like that, I think I do actually change my mind and add some colour to that. I don't apply the modelling paste over the whole page, I just apply it here and there in 3 or 4 different places. And then I set that aside to dry. I don't use a heat gun to dry modelling paste, I prefer to let it dry naturally. Now that the modelling paste is dry, I think the modelling paste doesn't stand out enough, so I decide to add some colour. I've put some samples here of my assorted sprays that I have, and I'm going to decide which one to use. I end up using the Glimmer Mist Gold, it's called, and I use that over the background. I use this old pizza box to spray in, so that's my little spray booth. And then I do actually go over it lightly with some Tattered Angels chalkboard in Valencia as well, just to give it a bit of added depth. I didn't really achieve what I was looking for here because the texture paste still doesn't stand out very much from the background. The texture paste actually absorbed more of the colour than I thought it would. I added a few splatters of Glimmer Mist Black Magic to the background as well. I set that aside to dry and decided that I wanted to do some alterations to the background. So I tore a strip off of the top of the layout paper. I didn't like the white piece that it left, so I realised I'd torn it the wrong way and had to tear it again. But anyway, then I inked over the top of it with some black ink and distressed it so that it looked pretty rugged. I then took the strip of domestic goddess paper that was left over from when I cut the front of the folder out and trimmed that down a bit and used that to go behind the green backing paper, making it back up to 12 inches by 12 inches. I then used a black Papercraft ink to ink around the whole background layer. Because I'd used the grunge look on the top section of the background, I decided I would use grungy techniques on the whole layout. So I took my distressing tool and distressed around the top cover of my folio. I did the same for the yellow piece of cardstock. I used double-sided tape to attach the second layer to the folio front. I attached it so that it had about a ½ an inch tilt, so it tilted to the right at the top. It wasn't sitting on the folio straight. I had another piece of the domestic goddess paper left over, so I thought I'd use that as a strip going horizontally across the layout. But because the folio opens, I had to cut the strip of paper so that the folio could still open. I distressed this piece of cardstock the same as all the other cardstock on there with my distress tool and then black ink. Now that I've prepared my strip and cut it to size, I'm going to attach it to the layout so that it looks, when you're looking at it from the top, as if it is one continuous strip. I used glue to attach the paper because it gives me a little bit of extra wriggle time, and I use my T-ruler to make sure that it's lined up nicely. Now that the basics of the layout are in place, I distress the edges of the layout using my distress tool and some black ink. I use some craft foam that I cut to size and some glue to attach the photo to the front of the folio. For my title, I'm going to use these Papercraft chipboard alphas. It's CB108 alphas number 2. I'm going to colour the alphas with the glimmer sprays, so I want to give them a coat of gesso first, so I give them a good coat of gesso and let that dry. When the gesso's dry, I use the same two sprays, that is the Glimmer Mist Gold and the Chalkboard Valencia, and I apply the paint with the glimmer spray with the brush, hoping to get a deeper colour. When the glimmer sprays were dry, I used some StazOn ink and this script stamp that I've had for quite some time, it hasn't even got a brand on it, to stamp on top of the colour that I'd applied. Unfortunately, I had my camera in the wrong position and I did not get to film that bit, but you can see here what the end effect is. You can also see a tab there that I've punched using a McGill's 2 1/4 inch tab punch. I have stamped that as well. That's cut out of the Domestic Goddess paper. You can see here that I've attached the tab to the top page of the folio so that I can later apply some letters to that says open so people know to lift that up. I'm now going to attach the letters that I've created for the title. The title says Watervale, which is the place that we were actually house sitting, well, that's the town that we were house sitting in. So I'm going to attach these with glue and using my T-ruler to try and make sure that they're straight. To add the word open to the little tab on the side of the folio, I'm using Basic Grey's Basic Micro Mono stickers. They're from 2009, so they're fairly old, and you can see they're well used. To embellish the page, I'm using Papercraft collectibles from the check-in range, and I've also cut that road trip shield on the black cardstock from a sheet of pattern paper from the check-in range. It's P863 Tour. I play around here with an assortment of different embellishments from the pack. When I decide what I want to use, I ink the edges of it, distress the edges of it, and use my glue to attach them in position. I've tucked a compass behind the photo. The road trip, I cut that so it's shaped like a tag and tucked that in where I had left that bit of space under the folio. Just a couple of things in layered around the photo just to give it a bit more interest. So that completed the layout, but I wanted to share how I actually put my layout into my album so that the folio can be opened. Firstly, I put the layout into the protective pocket and mark where the folio is going to open. Then I use my craft knife and a cutting mat and cut that slit so that I can feed the top layer of my folio through it. Next, I take my scissors and I cut down the outside seam of the page protector. This will allow me to open the page protector up and put the folio flap through the slit that I've made in the other side of the pocket, and then I will use some normal clear sticky tape to seal the right hand edge of the pocket up again. I'm sure that there's probably pockets that you can buy that are made especially for this type of thing, or maybe even a better way of doing it than this. If you know of anything that would be used for this sort of thing, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. So that's it for today's layout. A layout that has 13 photographs in it. I have got heaps and heaps of travel pages to do, so I'm always looking for layouts that incorporate multiple photos. I hope you've enjoyed my video today, and maybe you can give me some tips on some good pocket protectors that will protect this type of layout. If you've enjoyed my video, please subscribe to my channel, and if you'd like to share my video with your friends, I would love that. Thank you for sharing your time with me today.